Okay, and we are live. Good morning, afternoon. What did we say before? Morn afternoon to anyone. Morn afternoon, evening. And welcome
Good morning.
to what's that?
Yeah, I was going to say good morning, afternoon, and welcome. Which is, if you're older than sort of 35 years old, you know that the television program that comes from, which is a British favourite going back to probably like the early 70s. Good morning, afternoon, and welcome. Anyway, there you are.
I'm not going to be good at this trivia game. What program is that?
It's the two Ronnies. Did you know that, Lizzie? No, she didn't.
I'm revealing my age if I say that I do know that.
What she means, have you heard of that in the past? Were you told that in the past? Is what
I've heard of that in the past. Yes, Jenny. Thank you.
I feel like that's my parents were big on that show, kind of.
Yeah. Well, my grandparents, how about that? Yes.
Well, welcome everybody to Recruiting EQ episode number 52. This is our month-end sales panel. And I mean, this is sort of a soft launch in a way. I would call it a soft launch, I guess. We're officially in podcast land for real, everybody. So yay. This is actually going out live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X now instead of Instagram for the first time. But it will also be available all over the place, including YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. So super excited about that, and very happy to have such a lovely panel of speakers available for us today. The month-end sales panel seems to be the popular one so far. So thank you all for keeping it going on a monthly basis. Okay, so I guess a quick disclaimer before we go around the room with introductions, which is that if you are watching this live, please do comment. Your comments are welcome, your anecdotes, your questions. We've had a lot of great participation in the past, and that is very welcome. Just bear in mind, we are not on the platform you are consuming this on right now, so you can't direct message us. If your message is long, it may get cut off, unfortunately. And in the interest of privacy, we are going to not name you by name, unless we know you won't be mad, I guess, and we know you personally. But it's rare. Okay, disclaimer over. Shall we go around the room and introduce ourselves and a little bit about what we do, starting with Julie.
Okay, Julie Robinson, Raymond George Consultancy. What do I do? I actually do the job. So I do the job of find people for our clients. So talk to clients and find people. That's what I do. And we do that in the team in North America for staffing organizations. So that's me in a nutshell. Or Laurie?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Laurie. I work at Kelly Services Canada. I'm a senior account executive. I work directly with clients. I'm not so much on the candidate side of the business. So I look at bringing in new business for Kelly Services, maintaining relationships. I focus mostly in the Greater Toronto area, although we do have tentacles all across Canada. So I do have a good pulse on the Canadian market and the Toronto market. Next.
Who wants to pop on next?
I'll go next.
Sure.
So I'm Lizzie Kennedy. I'm founder of Kennedy Bond Consulting Group. We launched in April last year, so coming up to our first full year anniversary. We're actually a client of Julie, Rick, and Jenny. So delighted to be part of this. And I focus on both the client and the candidate side of things. So do full 360 life sciences search, so selling to pharma and biotech companies here in the US, typical hotspots, tri-state, Massachusetts, and California.
Thanks, Lizzie. Jim?
Sure. I'm Jim Irwin. I'm based in Toronto. I recently, as of January, took over as a senior director here with Swoon Canada, shoring up our staffing operations. I manage a ever-growing team of sales and recruiters, primarily based in Toronto, and also have an individual in Montreal. And prior to this, I've 10 plus years in the staffing space across Canada and North America. My prior team, I was managing across both Canada and the US. But I have a sales background myself, but have definitely been in a recruitment seat. Have managed recruiters as well, but pure sales background even prior to my staffing.
Pure sales in the blood.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim.
For better or worse.
For better and worse, all of us. Yeah. And Jenny?
Yeah, I'm Jenny Finch, and I'm based in the UK, in sunny Brighton. Prior to recruitment, I was pure sales as well. So went into a commission-only role, and then went in to be a rep before I went into recruitment. And now I've got almost 35 years of recruitment experience across a number of different roles. But like Julie and like the other guys here, I am full 360 and do the job itself. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Jenny. And I'm Rick Coluccio. I'm the host of this event, the Recruiting EQ podcast, and I'm also the VP of BD at Raymond George. I focus on largely sales, but I guess I'm a full 360 really when it comes down to it in rec to rec. So these are recruiting related, staffing agency related roles in many places across the United States. New York, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey. Actually, yeah, mostly New York area, come to think of it. But there you go. Oh, was that accent offensive? Can you do things like that? I'm not from New York. I'm not allowed, I don't think.
Fantastic accent, actually.
Oops.
What's done is done. So
yeah, it's out there now. I'm screwed. Sorry. I apologize to anyone that I've offended. Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here. And yeah, let's dive in. So panel questions wise, this is a pretty open forum. So if anybody has a burning need to talk about something else, please feel free. But I think one of the big hot topics that we see out there or have been discussing clients and candidate wise for the past couple of years has been just the up and down pendulum swing of the market itself. How are you guys feeling about the general direction of the market, big changes, big swings in what you're seeing? Just to start broad. Feel free to dive in, anybody.
I can speak up on this. I mean, it's been an interesting path, the last 5 years, with, well, we all experienced it, but I think as it pertains to now, specifically in Canada, I think we had some momentum in the back end of 2024. It's still it's a candidate type market depending on the specificity of the role. I mean, I primarily, my team primarily sells and recruits for, in the IT, the development space, in digital UX, and those are still, relatively, I'm not going to say niche, but there's a limited talent pool there, and to find really good people is still challenging for a lot of clients. So and a lot of companies are hiring. So we're seeing that momentum, but I think with the current political state in North America, we're seeing some trepidation, some a little hesitancy, just due to the uncertainty of how potential tariffs might affect the economy moving forward. So,
Dun dun dun. We've been on what, like 2 minutes? We're already into tariff.
yeah.
Yes.
There you go. I thought it was a softball question.
It's looming. It's looming. It's a big deal, and it's for real. So it's I've already been doing some account assessment with my teams, making sure that we're targeting more kind of tariff resilient industries versus ones that could be heavily affected. So
I would agree with Jim. At Kelly Services, we're more generalist, so we're not super specific in terms of the types of niche roles, although we do niche roles as well. So I do feel that manufacturing, the companies that are going to be more hard hit, they're really trepidatious when it comes to overspending. And I do agree with Jim. We're at the end of 2024. Things kind of were in an upswing, and now it's kind of, I still feel that there's holding patterns. Skilled trades seem to be a very niche market, not niche, but candidate driven market as well. There's certain roles where it's very tough to find candidates. So it's competitive. So I do see the competitiveness in the more senior positions, the more specialized positions, but the general labor, the entry level admin roles, they are very trying to fill the roles themselves. And I would say I've seen a bit of an uptick on the sales side. So we do handle sales roles. I do feel that, in order to boost up revenue, companies are looking to add good people to their sales team. So that is one area I've seen some traction and some growth in the last 6 months.
Very cool. Lizzie?
Is there confidence in the market for candidates though, as a candidate short market in perhaps your area, Jim, and also Laurie, and I'm sure Lizzie as well, is when you find the candidates and the offers and the clients are seeing these people, is there confidence for people to actually move and take that leap, or is there a little bit more of a hesitation from a candidate viewpoint?
In my experience, I can't say the hesitation is something that I've noticed impeding our business. I think I wouldn't be surprised that exists, but if anything, the top talent that we're putting in front of our clients, they're having multiple offers still. We're not the only person, and our clients aren't the only people that they're interviewing with, and so we're still having to navigate this and push and control our clients and advise them as much as possible to move as quickly and be nimble, because talent are still accepting and moving, like they were back in 2022. But that's only really for mine. I can definitely see why there would be some hesitation to move to a new company, knowing some of the uncertainty that's looming over the economy right now.
I would say there's certain markets are different than others. I do feel that some people have been looking for quite some time, and there is a sense of desperation in some positions where they really will jump at an opportunity as long as it's a good opportunity. But again, when it comes to those niche roles, it can be hard to pull them away. It can be hard to pull them away in terms of, why leave? It's got to be a significant offer. It's got to be something willing to take the risk, but also, like skilled trades, there a lot of companies who are hiring for similar positions. So it's, we've got signing bonuses, we've got, trying to pull them away, and it is tough, especially when you're in a position of, I wouldn't say you're in a position of power, but your worth, and that there's other opportunities out there. So the clients have to be on their game and ready to make a good offer.
And to that point, that is one of the recommendations we make to our clients as well. When they're entering an interview, that potential candidates interviewing that company just as much as they're interviewing that person for a fit. And so you're having to, while also interviewing for your own role, sell your organization, sell that opportunity. Why is this going to be a great move for you? Yeah. And so I think in the old school mindset, it's like, well, why would I hire you? But now on the flip side, it's more conversational around, this is why this is a great place to work. This is why it would be a great move, but also, then getting into, the person's skill set and their fit and what have you. So.
And I'll add on to that and just say that, the sort of subject of this meeting today is around month-end sales panel. And I think that certainly I always go, I think about business development and client side. But actually, this is probably more around selling to all parties and all parties selling to each other. So it's not just the business development of a client to pick up an order. It's sales in its entirety. Or influencing rather than sales, let's say, to all parties to get a desired move.
Yeah, recruitment is absolutely sales. That's the number one thing I guide my team to ensure that they're saying to the client. Our job is to sell your opportunity to prospective people. So it's all encompassing sales on both sides of our business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would say what I've noticed too is companies really are focusing on the culture, the culture within their own organization, culture that they provide, because, dollars and cents are really important. Obviously, we've got inflation, we've got a lot of uncertainty, but people don't want to leave just for money anymore. I do find that they want to leave for a good place to work that has that workplace balance, that offers, maybe, RSP matching, extra vacation. Sometimes when I get clients who are like, 2 weeks standard, we kind of like, there's a lot that are now offering a little bit more than that. So I do feel that it's beyond money and cents now in order to attract the right type of candidates, and companies are working a little bit harder to sell the candidates on joining their organization. As to Jim's point, it's you've got to be interviewing the organization just as much as the organization is interviewing you.
Lizzie, I feel like you've been very polite over there, but I'd love to hear your take on how
I
you
know.
feel about the market and life
Yeah, I
sciences
think my
too.
perspective is very different. I don't think I'm as kind of high volume. I'm very much retained search and interim assignments. So I've seen a real pickup on interim consulting, and I think that there's still a lot of opportunity out there. I mean, I did pretty well last year, and things have gone very, very well this year. And I've actually turned down clients. So my focus has kind of been more flipped on ensuring that I'm engaging with the right clients that are serious about hiring the right sort of candidates, and they're fully engaged on a search process. I'm not working with clients who say, hey, we've got a portal and we put roles through a portal. I'm not interested in that. For me, it's about engaging with hiring managers and also with talent as appropriate, and having these kind of engaging conversations, having cadence calls, things like that. And for me, I much prefer working with a committed client. And so I'm turning down, and I have turned down business when those clients don't work in the way in which I operate. And then, yeah, as you say, in line with that as well, I'd say that there's a lot more interim consulting, especially in the life sciences space. A lot of clients that are perhaps preclinical, or even if they're in the clinic for different reasons, that they're looking to hire consultants, or I'm selling a consulting solution because they perhaps don't need a full-time CMO, and it's more advantageous for whatever they're trying to achieve to have someone in the interim capacity. So I think the market's fine. I think it's like a pre-COVID market. It's okay. There's still opportunity for sure. It's about going out there and finding it and being selective. So I value my time, and for me, it's about working with buying clients essentially.
And there's a lot of parallels. I would say, we are also very choosy with our partners. If it's not a valued partnership, if it is just a portal, you're throwing resumes into a black hole, and maybe one comes through the other side. That's such a waste of time and effort. We want to be, our job is to help our clients, and if they're not willing to take our help, then let's go work with someone better who's actually going to appreciate it. And to your point, there is business out there. There is a lot of business out there. We are still, even with the kind of trepidation, so to speak, we are still growing. We actually have more business now than we did, Q4 and Q3 last year. So we are seeing that. So, but yeah, in this business, you have to be so choosy about the good partners. I
think
feel.
You made a good point as well, Jim, and I think Laurie touched upon it about remaining niche. And I think as long as you remain niche and expert within a space, then and you can demonstrate value add, then that's great. But also with that kind of comes the compounding. So if you're an expert, you get referrals, and then those referrals build your network. That creates more opportunities. So I just think it's so much more valuable remaining niche within a space.
Yeah. I completely agree. That touches on kind of a lot of the higher level sales strategy that I kind of instill in my team. Would be rolling their eyes because they hear me say this all the time. I have a broken record, but it's putting that so what behind your outreach to a client. 85% of what I do versus what Kelly Services does versus what Raymond George does, 85% of what we do is very similar. It's that 15% of, are you niche? Do you know your market? Do you have specialized people? But it's also that relationship piece. And so what's that value add? What's the so what is, why would a client respond to your email? Why would a client call you back when you left a voicemail? Providing them value. And that's that little extra 15%, I would say. And keeping that in the back of your mind with every touch point, with every strategy you're putting forward. It's putting yourself in the client's seat of, so what? Why would I work with this person?
Do you feel?
Yeah.
Sorry,
so yes, it's not sort of giving away trade secrets here, Jim. But what is the so what? So with your team or in your mind, what is different, and how do you coach your folks on that?
It's.
I have put you on the spot. Sorry.
No, it's great. I mean, that's exactly it, and it's going to be different for each person. I've come in to enhance and hire salespeople on my team, and I've been fortunate enough to have a few people reach out to me that I've worked with for years and years, and who have specifically been either embedded in the digital space, the development space, the creative space within the Greater Toronto area for the last 10 plus years. So when we talk about that niche and being that connected and being able to have either a quick turnaround if it's an immediate need, to really be tapped into, whether it's looking for a specialized development skill set combined with that leadership potential and the communication skills to sit in front of a boardroom of executives and talk about the complexities of their development work, but in layman's terms to people who are thinking a bit more higher level. That kind of role is very difficult to find and to recruit on. But when I can have someone who has, from the sales side, can tap in and understand what that support and that strategic support looks like with that client, but also on the recruitment side, knowing that we're not just blowing smoke. We have those people already in our network, and we can turn around quickly on support with that. That is the kind of so what where we're tapped in. But that's, again, it's going to be different. It's subjective for every person. If it's a new person coming through, they're going to, and I just hired a brand new individual who's starting on my team in a month, 0 staffing experience, but I've never seen that kind of energy in a salesperson before. And so being able to take that person, what their so what is going to be very different than, my 10-year plus person who's been tapped into, the advertising agency space across the GTA for the last decade. So it's, very different.
And I would ask you, or anyone actually, so for someone that's embedded in their community, they bring the expertise, they bring the value through their knowledge, being around the block, understanding the SME, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, I think, a fairly easy so what. Someone that's new to our industry in their sales capacity, it's like they don't have that to lean on. So it's like what is there, so what? It's like, what else can they leverage? I mean, and I'm just, because I don't know the answer to that, right? I mean, I'm just interested in what everyone else thinks. Like, do you lean on others in the team, or how do you bring that to the table from a so what perspective for someone that's entry level?
I don't mean to dominate the conversation with this, because I came from.
All right, Jim.
Sorry, but I remember, and I used to work at Robert Half. That's where I started my staffing, and we would have full training on exactly that question. And so it would be, you think of a target, like a bullseye. And so in the middle is yourself, and so the value that you're bringing to your client. The second ring is your team. And so, again, from a sales, if you're just sales, not recruit, what's that experience, that tenure, that specialization that the recruitment, your fulfillment side is bringing to market, that the subject matter expert, so to speak. And then the third bigger ring is the organization. At Robert Half, we would talk about, publicly traded and 65 years old and so on and so forth. And that has its pros and cons as well. And so it's just being able to craft the value prop statement and tying those pieces in, your team, and that company as a whole. And again, that would be completely different. And we would run hours of training on this, and it would be so different for everyone. And being able to make that into a concise 15 to 30 second, elevator pitch. So I'll stop talking for a while now.
Yeah, and I'm not challenging you, Jim, particularly, and I don't mean to also dominate the conversation, but I don't know that works very well these days. So I think that that is like,
I'm not training my team on that anymore.
Yeah, it's like, no. I think there's got to be something more, honestly, because it's like that doesn't really set you apart, because that's what all the Robert Half people say. No offense, Robert Half, and then anyone that's been at Robert Half, that's what they'll all say. So there's like a greater. It's almost like a domino effect. Everyone's saying the same thing. Yeah, well, I've worked. Who cares how long they've been in business? Right? I don't care.
And that goes back to that relationship piece, that 15% I was talking about, where and again, I don't want, no offense to all my Robert Half colleagues and friends who are still there, but that business is very transactional. It's not relationship based, and so you have somebody move, there's another person to come in and take it over without missing a beat. Whereas I think that the strongest recruiters and sales individuals that I've seen have clients and accounts and networks that follow them versus staying with their brand.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I'd say almost to kind of just jump in a little bit, is that when you're selling, you're no matter what the product is, because you could sell anything, really what they're buying is that relationship with you. If you can understand what their business needs are, doing a little bit of investigation, because that's so what to me is more like, what's in it for them? What's in it for them? How are you going to solve their problem differently than anybody else? And if you can figure that out, if you can do a little bit of investigation and sell yourself that, hey, I took the time to figure out what maybe your problem is potentially, and I think I have a solution for you, you're going to get a much better response versus, hey, I see you're hiring for this, I can help you. Well, yeah. They're probably getting 20 other cold emails from very similar agencies. So you do have to stand apart. And I do think fundamentally sales is about yourself standing out and maintaining that relationship, like you were saying, Jim, because that relationship will follow you. Yeah. And what I've seen in my spot as being more of a generalist is that sometimes clients become candidates and candidates become clients. It's a very small world. And if you can do a good job with the client when they're looking, they're going to come to you. Or if you do a really good job placing somebody, they're going to try to bring their business. Or if they're with, ABC Co. and you've been able to handle and help them, they move to 1, 2, 3. They're going to want to work with you as well because they were able to form that relationship. So it is very relationship based. And I do think that that's what helps you stand apart from everyone else is being able to be memorable.
Yeah. And I also, sorry, Jim, I also think that that different people will buy from different people. So your audience is who you have clients with and who you build relationships might be very different to the person that's sitting next to you. So having a diverse sales force or team actually allows a diverse range of customers and clients because everybody is different. And you can get, I've seen it so many times where, potentially there's a hot desk, someone moves on, there's a hot desk. So the assumption is that person's just going to pick up that desk and that work and kind of, there's 250 grand sitting there that you can just capitalize on. Well, the reality is that might happen, but that person still needs to build that relationship with that client and those individuals. It's not a given, and I think sometimes you need to still approach it. If you're taking over clients, you still need to approach it as in, I need to work really hard to understand what they need, and I'm not going to assume that my colleague who did it before, I'm going to do exactly the same as them because I'm different and my style is different and how I think is different. So I think we can't lose sight of diversity as well, like diversity in clients, diversity in people in a business helps, strengthen, the core of an organization. Because if you recruit everyone the same, then your client base will be exactly the same as well. That's
it's so true. I'm happy you brought that up, Jen, because it's just so true. And so many times where I've seen a salesperson kind of bang down the door of a company, not getting any traction, their style just isn't connecting with their client. And then you hand it off to somebody different, looking at it from a different strategy, and just coming in with a different tone, and they get the response right away. They get that rec right away, and it turns into a team of recs. And so you see that time and time again. And the person who is like, well, what's your secret? And it's just, you wish there was a secret that you could share, but it is people want to work with people that they connect with and that they like. And so if your style is connecting with an individual, a buyer or a client, and someone else, you can't take it personally. We all want to think that we're super likable and that everyone's going to like us, but the reality is, that's not always true. So and there's companies that I just don't connect with, but people on my team will absolutely thrive with. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
On that front of the relationship piece from a sales perspective, personally, I feel like, I've certainly heard in picking up jobs from people before that they've mentioned that they're just kind of like, I don't really need a relationship seller. I need someone who's going to grind out. I need someone who's going to have the grit. They always say grit, and people seem to mean different things. Some people think grit is high numbers. Other people think grit is insistence and resilience and being able to overcome objections. But any way you slice it, my thinking is that the relationship piece has always been what gets you the real job order, right? like if they open up to you about what they really are going to hire, it's very different than what's on paper 9 times out of 10. And I feel like 1 out of 5 account managers is getting the actual job order, in my opinion. Do you guys feel the same way, that there's a vast difference when you have a real relationship into like, this is the real problem, this manager does not like blah 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 character, so I'm not actually going to hire a da da da, you know what I mean? When you get into the personas that are involved, and the sort of, there's always a story usually back there. And I feel like that the relationship piece is actually giving you the real job. Like you have an edge because now you're like, ooh, you know what they're really going to hire for real. Do you guys see that in your respective industries? Does it change industry to industry? Particularly, Lizzie, I'm curious on a retained front if you see that as well. Because obviously with a retainer, you really need that, right? Like obviously.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, I mean, I think typically I meet all my clients face to face, in person, and that's really, really important. Same with candidates. I get so much more from that. As a result, side note, it's probably worth noting, over 50% of my placements are through referral. And again, that's just because I build those relationships with my candidates, with my clients. Laurie, you mentioned candidates becoming clients, clients becoming candidates. It's the same sort of thing for me. And so the meeting in person is critical, because then you get a feel for the company, who's who within the organization. I typically meet the majority of the C-suite when I am engaged with a client before we're kind of discussing anything surrounding searches they want to retain us on. And that's invaluable, because then you get to really learn about exactly what they're looking for. And typically, I kind of don't care about the search they want to retain me on. It's really about, okay, what are they looking for from a cultural perspective? What is the kind of person that's going to fit in this organization? And I've got a couple of clients where I now know them inside out. And, you know, essentially, I know the sort of person that will do very well and will thrive in the organization, and who won't. And on paper, a lot of the time, the people that I'm speaking with can do the job, but actually it's the personality that doesn't quite fit. And so that meeting in person is absolutely critical to kind of generating those relationships and really understanding the nuances surrounding what a client is looking for.
Awesome. You guys, how about you guys, Laurie? How do you feel about the...
Yeah, I'll add a little bit onto what Lizzie was saying in terms of fit. What I advise my clients a lot of times is that job description is a very black and white description of what you're looking for. And, you know, it's very specific. We need 5 years experience. We need an MBA. We need this. And you're not really, unless you take the time to get to know the client and really know what they're looking for, some of that fit, some of that culture, you're not really going to make the best hiring decision. And so I do feel that spending that time with the client on the front end, understanding what's in between the black and white job description, and that really is what helps make that successful placement. And ultimately, you're going to get more business from a client if you actually are able to fulfill it, because as great as bringing in orders are, I'm sure we can all relate, we don't always fill all the orders that come in, or at least in Kelly Services' shoes, you know, we're generalists, and sometimes, you know, that they found somebody before we've been able to present, or whatever the case is. So once you actually understand their organization, understand what it is that they're looking for, you're way more likely to get more business, better business, and you start building that relationships. And asking questions helps build relationships as well, not just taking things at face value. Asking those discovery type questions. And it's not just about the role, it's about the organization, about the type of person. How would this person look after 6 months if they're successful? What does that look like for you? Because then that helps us find the right person. And then the next time around you have a successful placement, you know the type of person that worked, you know the type of person they said no to as well, because you know you present a few candidates and they don't always say yes. And so what is it that they're not looking for as much as what it is that they are looking for? And that does take some time. And I do think with Lizzie, it seems you've built a nice business for yourself of, you know, really understanding your clients and understanding their businesses and getting that repeat business. I mean, that's what successful sales is, I think, ultimately.
And I think on top of that, I think, you know, you're mentioning about, you know, what does work, doesn't work. You know, I have the ability now, because I've developed that trust with my clients, that I can push back sometimes. So if they say, oh, this person's not quite right, I say, look, trust me, interview them. They're fantastic. Believe me, they are. And then they do. And oh, yeah, they're good. Great. And it's because I know their company and I know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I think one of the greatest compliments for recruiters is when a client will say to you that, to somebody that, if I'd have received that CV directly, I wouldn't have met with them and I wouldn't have, even entertained them. And
Jenny, I had that last year. I had a candidate for a mid-sized commercial stage, like a 3,000 headcount company. And it was just that. It was a very senior search. And the CMO said, no, I can't interview this person. They're not right. This is why, and kind of listed it. Mm-hmm. And I pushed back with a whole list of things. We got on a call as well, discussed everything. He was like, fine. Oh my gosh, you're relentless. He interviewed him and then he offered them the job and, he's in post and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think we do have the power to do that, but only when you've built that trust and that relationship. Yes. Otherwise, I mean, Jim, you mentioned it earlier, Robert Half, a few others, where it's very transactional, and that makes it very challenging to do a good job and to get that repeat business and to do all this good stuff.
And that, I mean, just to that point too, sorry for interrupting that. That was kind of what was the impetus for me making my career change, because, that the ability to be in an organization that does truly focus on that relationship piece, that trust, because I like to think of, I like to kind of simplify what we do, and it can kind of help really put, philosophy behind what we're doing. But our job is to help people. And that's it. It's to help our clients find that right fit. It's to help them grow with the right people. And it's to help people get jobs. And those people, just to, Lori, was your point, that you get those jobs, they eventually turn into buyers because they're growing in their career because you've helped them do so. And how do you help people? And just to reiterate everything that everyone's saying here is be inquisitive. That curiosity is something that I look for when I'm hiring for someone on my team. That comes naturally. It's something that's harder to train, is that natural kind of curiosity to really get under the hood, so to speak, or the bonnet, depending on where you are, and to really understand how not just the right fit, but how it is, how to understand, how does this role fit within your organization? How is this, strategically fitting in with your growth plan, and making sure that we're finding that right person who wants to be invested in that growth with your organization as well. And so couldn't agree more with what everyone's saying.
I always find it interesting, and sorry to keep sort of on about it, but almost like entry-level people or junior people, sort of like how to get to this point. Because, I mean, we're all sort of tenured, seasoned folks in the recruitment industry and understand what it takes, I think, to get there. But if you are sort of indoctrinated into this bubble of this is how it should be done, or no one challenges that, it's like, I think, really quite difficult to get ahead. So I just... I'm just interested to sort of see, how, people's thoughts on how you do sort of exploit that. Okay, I want to go and spend time with a client. I want to go and see a client and be on a client visit, which might take longer than, here's a job, try and fill the job, a transactional type of situation. It's like, how do people, is it just because of personal intuition around, okay, this is how I want to try and service this client or work with this client? Or so how do you push through that sort of norm of perhaps what a lot of, and how a lot of agencies operate?
Well, Julie, I'll piggyback on the back of that to use it as a segue. We had a comment come in from a listener viewer saying the $1 million question is, what's the best way to get a contact to make time for you to meet with them? So that whole business of how do you break that barrier? How do you do your outreach? How do you get your clients to meet with you and spend time with you in the first place and open up? It is a giant question. And usually at the back half of these sales panels, we shift to this direction as well, to be like, also, how has that changed? Like, how is it different now than it was even last year, right? Because it's changing really quickly. But I think it's a good sort of round discussion for all of us to sort of like, especially for newbies or people who haven't figured this all out yet, that are new to it now. Like, what's brand new, especially that we can advise them? What do we find is working? What's not working? How do you guys all feel about that?
Hey, I can speak. I can speak to this because it has evolved. And this goes back to that so what I was talking about before, putting yourself in a client's mind. So you're reaching out to me. Okay, I see you work for a recruiter. So what? Like, why would I work with you? But if you're that newbie coming in, you have, someone giving you, whether it's a Fortune 500 account or some boutique startup, what have you, it's do your homework. Understand before you're even, connect. Let's say you're aiming for a VP. make sure that you're reading whatever financial reports that might be available online, what news articles that they've put out, maybe statements from their founder or the CEO. Understand that direction. Connect with people who are actually working, and maybe not decision makers, but who are people who are actually executing on work. Understand what those projects are, and then take that intel and put it together in an outreach, whether you're reaching out and ideally over a phone call first, but dialing into these people, but using the knowledge and that research that you've done. And this goes back to that curiosity piece. You're just really truly understanding that client almost better than the people who are actually working in there. And that takes work. There was a quote that I see floating around on LinkedIn all the time from some salespeople I follow, but landing an enterprise client takes enterprise effort, and you really need to go and do that kind of homework. And I know you're talking about how things have evolved, and I'll touch on this a little bit, but even starting to use ChatGPT, some of the AI for that, you can go in and say, hey, this, whatever, American Express, I don't know why that popped on the top of my head, type in, be like, what is it American Express investing in within their business in Q1 or Q2 of 2025? It will tell you, and it will pull from a lot of articles, and will give you a nice summary that then now you can take that intel and start doing a little bit more pointed research. So there's a lot of ways for people to do that homework, but for the newbies, it's a heavy lift. They have to do that kind of work to get that trust, but to be really curious up front.
I think historically, I've been in businesses where we have hired non-experienced individuals that we've trained and that we've put through, they've been mentored or they've worked in a team. And just going back to the visit question and the importance of it, obviously depending on location, depends whether you're on site, but the sooner that I think individuals and new people can go out on visits and attend them with experienced recruiters or with their manager, what they get is an absolutely eye-opening, oh my goodness me, I can now fill this job. I can go away and I've gathered the right information and I've learned so much more about the business that I'm going to get it right or closer in my submittals than I would have done previously. And I think once people have had the opportunity to see that, as newbies, then there is more of a direction and a push for, if I'm going to fill this opportunity, what do I need to do to fill it? I need to understand them. I need to get to understand their culture. I need to know when I turn up, is there a reception area? Who's in the office? Where are they? And really sort of like then get enthused about doing that. And even using, I'm not going to give a word track here because that's not the point of this conversation, but even sort of thinking, and maybe using it, how we work successfully with other clients, Mr. Client, is that we come and see you and we understand and we're prepared to do that and we're happy to do that because it makes, your job easier in terms of actually sharing with us what you're looking for. But equally, when we are talking to these great candidates, we can show them that you are committed to hiring and describe exactly what you're looking for. And I think that obviously the market has moved on and, people work in different locations. It's not always possible. But it is such a key, it's a key element, as Lizzie said, go in to see your clients if you can, if they're geographically available.
I'd add to that too. So when you are, let's imagine that you are on a call, I think that confidence plays a fairly big part in this.
Yeah.
Because if I talked to a client and took a sort of fairly subservient part in that conversation, I think the likelihood that I'm going to secure what I want, which could be a meeting, is probably quite low. If I can demonstrate that I'm confident that the way that I'll solve their problem, and it's their problem. So if they've got a vacancy or a need or a business issue, which means that that's why I'm calling them, because they've got a problem, they've got a gap, or they've got a high demand in work, therefore they need extra people, whatever it is that the business problem is. If I can make sure that they understand that's your problem, it's not my problem. That's not my problem, actually. It's your problem, but I can solve your problem, right? But I'm not going to say it quite like that, but that's the truth of it. They have a problem and I'm offering to help. Right, which is like, hello, that's quite beautiful. So if I can get that across to them, and I'm going to do it for free, not in Liz's case, but I'm going to do it for free until the point where, I've solved the problem. And the way I can do that best is by actually getting in front of them. Then why wouldn't you? Why would you not meet me? That would be not to do that. So I think that If I can articulate that, then I think that you probably be able to get in front of a client most often than not. And if they still won't meet you after that, I'd be like, how serious is this? And how much?
But also, Julie, I think you're assuming that people are asking to meet. I also think there is a situation now where people and consultants are not even asking to meet. They're afraid to go out there and meet with clients. So ask, like it's just this really, really simple thing. And then you can kind of go from there. I think also like there's some elements, we're talking about some things where it sounds like people have accounts and relationships they can leverage. If we're talking about kind of cold call, nothing at all, nothing to make you stand out, it's a simple thing where you've got to demonstrate that you know certain things. I don't do too much research though, but where the demonstrating I know certain things comes in, it just staying within a market. I don't deviate, I don't change space. I do the same market, I have done for years. And so as a result, all the knowledge is compounded over time. I'm known by certain people. And then as a result, I get referred business. I get really good insight and intel from both candidates and clients. And I think that's what's important. So I think the biggest thing is if you're starting out, then just stick with a space and stick with a market. And in time, the wins will come. And then when it comes to getting in front of a client, ask to meet with them. So, part of our process is we like to meet with all our clients. It's very important to demonstrate, blah, blah, blah. That's all you need to do. But yeah, I'd say remaining niche and then demonstrating on a pitch call a little bit about what you know about the market, clients that you've worked with. I'm always name dropping people that I've worked with, referring to not just companies, but also people that are very well known within industry. And then in time, that will set you apart. But I also very much separate things. So even if I get someone on a call and a cold call, I'm then booking in a pitch call. And then from a pitch call, it's to discuss their pain points, their problems. I don't discuss any sort of search. I don't point out any search because then it becomes a transaction. And that's not what you want. You want to develop a relationship. 100%. So then you discuss kind of processes, things like that. Then there's additional calls that you're booking in. We're not even talking about the search yet. So it's kind of a longer burn, but you have to be patient and persistent. You have to follow up. You have to do what you say you're going to do. But you do all of that and you'll be successful.
Go for it, Lori. I was going to ask you.
I wanted to bring it back to a little bit what Julie had said kind of at the beginning about how do you know when to break free of the process? And I do feel that as a new salesperson, you actually should follow a process. There should be certain metrics that you need to meet. There should be a certain cadence, because it's only when you become confident in doing that and being repetitive enough that you can have that confidence to go off that. Mm-hmm. Earlier in my sales career, I sold cars over the phone, and we followed a very strict script. Well, you kind of took them through. And it wasn't until I probably had done that a few hundred times that I started feeling a little bit more confident to throw this in there and throw that in there, because I had done it so many times and I knew that it worked, but I had to be comfortable and confident. And so I do think as a newer salesperson, find a process that works well for you, hone on that and keep doing it. And then you will become more confident. You will become more able to, if they're interjecting at a certain point, okay, you can handle that, and then go back to the process that that works. And I know that Rick, the question had kind of been with somebody who's a little bit newer, put your 100 calls in a day or 50 calls in a day, get your emails out. And it might work a little bit different than some people may prefer to do calls first and then emails, then calls. I don't know if there's a perfect solution. I do feel in today's day and age, a lot of people don't answer their phone and emails go into junk. So I do feel that it does have to be a good combination of when you're cold prospecting, doing a little bit of both, leaning on social media. I do think in terms of newer technologies, I do feel, being on LinkedIn, but actually active on LinkedIn is really good way to be passively targeting your clients and becoming that expert and talking about issues. And then people know, hey, I remember that Lori girl or Jim person, that they're always on social media. They're always talking about staffing. That's a passive way as well as, you're actively pursuing your clients as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you on the mix too, right? Like example, I was trying to headhunt somebody just yesterday, and it was like I like doing audio messages personally onto their direct thing, which you can only do from the mobile app of LinkedIn. But doing a direct audio message, it's just mysterious, right? It's got this little sound wave, you know what I mean? So people are like, what the heck is this? It's still novel to an extent, so that's a way to stand out. But this particular person listens to the message, responded, and it was a no. And I rebutted that. And then the next one was, let's take this off LinkedIn because they didn't want to get in trouble. So I got their phone number. So now we went to text. This is all in a few minutes, right? So now we're texting back and forth. And it's like, let me just send you the job brief. And it was, no, I don't want to waste your time, blah, blah. And we texted a little bit further. And then finally it was, okay, fine, send me the job brief. And then sent the job brief. And then we're talking about it via text, all before getting to a call, right? So it's like that multifaceted thing in a headhunt. And this is someone for you, Lizzie, by the way. There you go. It's a subtle plug. But so, and I bring this up also because I feel like this is a bit of a dead art in terms of what I hear. I mean, people probably try to sell to you guys, right? As a salesperson, what are the inbound sales? Has it been a while? Because for me, it's been a while since I had someone effectively try to sell something to me. I had one woman who did not let me get off the phone to try to sell me VA services to outsource for sourcing. Brilliantly. She was fantastic. I told her, I still don't need this, but you're good. Like, nobody keeps me on the phone. This is nuts, And so I said, call me back in 6 months just because I'm sorry. I don't need, but I may need it now, lay it then. I'm not going to string you along. But have you guys had anybody where you're like, hey, wow, this guy's actually got, or gal's actually got chops and can do this? Any decent stories out there, or is it all just womp womp usually when they reach out?
I think probably the percentage of direct calls, and I will always answer my phone, like even if I don't know the number, I'll always answer it because you never know.
Totally.
I'm not precious about that at all. And if it is a sales call, then it's normally, unusual, the amount of, but I will have a conversation, I will take the time of day to the person, on email, on LinkedIn more. So my sort of like, someone rings me, fantastic, have a conversation, understand whether there is, a product or a service that could be interesting. On email, like if I get a direct email, as long as it's not too generic, maybe I might have a look at it. On LinkedIn messages, if I can see that there's this automative and then you get the question mark, Jenny, question mark, almost like you haven't responded to your previous two. So therefore I'm just going to ask you, that question mark. It's not a relationship, is it? It's a transaction. So yeah. But if I do get calls, typically they do stand out. I don't think anybody that is prepared to pick up the phone at the moment, make a cold call, is not going to have a good call and not going to have a good conversation personally. So because it's rarity, isn't it? It's a rarity. And
as I say on that, Jenny, I want to retain C-suite search off a cold call. I had a cold call and then I booked in a pitch, obviously, but I got them on the phone cold, not planned, and then spent 10 minutes on the phone and then had a, full-on pitch, won it, all that sort of stuff. Same thing. But recently I did actually have someone cold call me after I posted online saying I'm hiring to my team. And they reached out and she was fantastic, really bubbly, fab. I interviewed her and I haven't hired her. And unfortunately, she doesn't have any recruitment experience. But I love the fact that she had the gumption to pick up the phone, reach out. She engaged me on the information that I'd kind of put online and was able to kind of say why she would be suitable potentially for a position on my team. And that encouraged me to interview her. And I referred her to someone else because I thought she was that good. And Julie, I actually need to refer her to you as the person I was talking about.
Yes, please, and thank you.
Yeah.
It all kind of ties back to what I think I said earlier, just around the help piece, and everyone I think is just kind of adding to this because that's our job, is to help people, and the only way you can do that is through relationships, and really the only way you can differentiate yourself from a lot of other people is to put some humanity behind your sales efforts, which is, even if you are just leaving a voicemail and maybe sending a follow-up, at least you took the time to do that instead of, and I've used this at other companies I've worked for, massive automation tools where you can put together email sequences and you have the automated follow-ups. And so it makes it almost feel like, hey, there's a real person behind that, but you can always tell. It's just, there's no relationship. It's not a real human. But if you are taking that extra time to make the call, chances are you might get somebody live and pick up a retained search on a quick call, or at the same time, it does differentiate you. And so to answer your question, Rick, I get this all the time because I have other recruiting firms and staffing firms reaching out to me to help me with, my internal recruitment and whatnot. But one of the ones that stood out to me just in 2024 was a gentleman had reached out. I think an automated, not automated, pardon me. It was an email. It might have been LinkedIn. It was definitely, an email or a message, but then took the time maybe a day or two later to fully call me with, not a blocked number. I saw it was his name. I recognized it from the email that he had sent me, and I answered. And I'm like, I might not be able to help you here with throwing some business your way, but let's expand our network. And it's just something where now we've kept in touch, and I've expanded my network, and we can help him. I think even Julie, some of the ways that you and I kind of first interacted as well. In a similar way, you have to put humanity behind it, because our clients are coming to us for help, and so then they need people that they're going to trust, that have the confidence to understand what their problems are, and that we're really going to be able to effectively understand what that help may look like, even if the client doesn't fully understand themselves what they really need.
I'll add on to that too, and think that and say that two things. I think firstly, it's whenever you're trying to sell, or let's use the word engage, whoever it's to, whether it's candidate or client, and there are statistics around this, that so many people, whilst they make that effort, the first effort, or maybe the second effort, what then happens is they drop off, right? So if you do that and you don't do a follow-up and 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 a follow-up until you've got an answer, not to the point where you're just going to really upset somebody, because that's not the relentless approach, isn't necessarily the right approach, I don't think, but using your intelligence and emotional intelligence to figure out when you should follow up at the right time to do whatever you want to do, that is a little bit different from the first time, will get you a result. I think there are statistics sort of, last time I looked around, so you have to have 10 outreach, whatever that might be, before you get some sort of result. And that's for someone that's, just sort of pounding the pavement, let's say. Obviously, if you're starting from a different point and you've, engaged in a conversation, then it's not going to take you 10 times, hopefully, to get a result, let's call it. But there are so many times that people don't follow through. It's like, what was the point in doing that in the first place? So absolute waste of time, in my opinion. And then I think the second part is, once you've got some sort of communication going on, you've got to stick on top of it and excuse the expression, milk it for everything that you possibly can and take it to the next level. And I don't mean that from you've just got to nurture it. You've got to nurture it hard, so it's then not lost. So because, again, what's the point of getting it in the first place if you're then not nurturing it to the point where it yields something? And yield doesn't mean necessarily a monetary return, because I'm not that mercenary that it has to be all about money all the time. But there has to be some benefit in it for both of you or both parties, which will mean that you want to have a conversation at some point. So, I think it's not around what you say, it's how often you say it, and then what you do with it once you've actually got there.
Yeah, I did a sales funnel training last year sometime, and it's basically pushing people through a funnel, to get them to the close. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they talked about is really identifying the buying type, the personality, and being a little bit more strategic in your outreaches. So instead of just saying, "Hey, Julie, it's Lori, I've got staff," blah, blah, and then same thing, it's maybe jump on the LinkedIn, see if they have a LinkedIn. "Hey, Julie, I see that you like rock climbing," or something like that. Hey, and try to identify, because people like people that they like. People like the people that you've taken the time to kind of get to know what their interests are. And if you're more of, a personality that's a little bit more dominant, you'll respond more to somebody who's more direct. Where if you're a little bit more sensitive, you may not like that direct approach. So I do think in sales, especially when you're new and you're pounding the pavement, it can be a little bit of, you want to do a lot of outreach, you want to hit your metrics, but you also want to spend a little bit of time getting to know either the company, the person you're targeting. Most people, especially at the senior level, have some sort of LinkedIn. Not everyone is completely filled out, but you know, if you do take a little bit of time, follow them, engage with their posts, you know, give a little before you ask, you know, take interest in them. And I do feel if you like their post, if you engage with their post, when you do go in for an ask or an email or a call, they may recognize that you've been following them, that you've put in that effort. So sometimes those relationships aren't an immediate return. You know, like you said, that those 10 outreaches, they might not be in today's day and age 10 phone calls or 10 emails. It could be 10 interactions, 10 touch points, 10, you know, a LinkedIn message. Hey, thanks for connecting with me. I'm glad to add you to my network. You're not really asking for anything at that point, but you're acknowledging that they're important to you. You have in your mind that they're a target. They might not know at that point. And you kind of continually chip away a little bit at that prospect. So I do think sometimes with sales, we want that immediate gratification, that immediate yes. I think in today's day and age, it does take a little bit of time. And if this is relationships, which we all had kind of said at the account management, this is all about relationships. Those relationships take time, take trust, and, you know, caring about what they're interested in. It goes a long way, I do think.
Understood. Jenny, I know that you're sorry. Go ahead.
We're all going like this to talk.
I was going to say, just time-wise, I know that Jenny, you had.
I'm all right at the moment.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, please feel free to add then if you're staying.
I might actually have to run. I do have a meeting that I'm running to.
No worries.
It is a sales call though, but this was absolutely lovely. Thank you for having me here. So
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks for
insightful chat. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
I can't remember exactly the finer details of this, but not long ago I saw a post on LinkedIn from a new recruiter in, you know, not entry level, but had been in the market, just come into the market, was learning their trade. Obviously, everyone was telling them to build relationships with people. And basically this post was about, I can't build, you know, how do I build relationships? And actually, you know, if you don't give me a chance to try and fill one of your roles. And there was this almost like this promise underneath it of saying, look, you know, I don't have a lot of roles to work on at the moment. I will make you my priority. Give me the chance to work on your job. And
but Jenny,
you know,
again, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but with that's a transaction. It's like you're saying, give me the chance to work on your job. It's not about that. You're trying to demonstrate that you're an expert in your space. And it's not about, hey, let me work on your jobs. Hey, can we just talk? Like, what's your approach when you're engaging with search firms? How do you engage with search firms? Have you ever engaged with search firms? And I think when you're flattering someone, or if you flatter them and say, hey, I just want to pick your brains. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything in return. That's where you're initiating a conversation. But saying, hey, on LinkedIn, I want you to, can you give me some jobs and I'll be the best person working on your jobs ever? Isn't this great? Like, I don't know. I think that's the worst way to go about things.
Well, I don't know. I can't, as I say, I can't remember the outcome of it. But the point that this person was almost saying was, you know, if I'm trying to compete with other people in the marketplace that have got 10 years experience and they've got lots of clients that they're working with, you know, I'm looking to build a relationship with a client. But I need the chance to do that. And actually there was almost like there was quite a lot of feedback on it saying it was quite a novel, you know, yes, they were asking in terms of, you know, give me a chance to kind of work on a job outwardly in the marketplace on LinkedIn. Quite brave, because obviously there's a few people that might have responded as well. So it was quite brave to do that. But we were talking earlier, obviously, about how do the new people get that chance to do that? And yes, it is about relationship building, but actually their point was, you know, I haven't got the relationships and I want to build a relationship. How I'm going to build it? Yes, you can, you know, obviously there is, they were more transactional in their recruitment piece. They weren't in executive search. It was a different type of sector. But it was interesting that they'd actually thought about it to say, you know, I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to put it out there, because if you give me the chance, then I will work my socks off on it and I'll build a relationship with you. You know, I'll probably care more about you. Their aim was to say almost like I'm going to care more about your job than perhaps people that have got tons of jobs on their desk. And it was just an interesting sort of like way of thinking about it and comment.
I get that. I still think even if it's some more junior searches that someone's working across and they're trying to make a name for themselves, it's just ask for leaders within your space, ask hiring managers, prospective hiring managers in your space, and say, hey, I'm an expert in this space. I'm looking to build out and develop a network of people. I see you're a leader in this space. Let's talk. You're not promising them a job. You're not asking them for anything. You're just saying, hey, let's have a conversation. Then you're on their radar. And then that's when a relationship develops. It's such a simple thing to do, but people don't do it. And a lot of people do they're like, oh, I do reverse headhunting and things like that. I'm just like, oh, that's awful. I think when you're lying to somebody about a potential opportunity, unless there is something legitimate, of course, but if you're lying to try and engage with someone, I don't think that's the worst approach. And I think just be honest and be like, hey, I'm working in this space, building out my network. You're a leader. Let's talk. And a lot of people do respond to that. I get a lot of response from that. But even if you are more junior, I guarantee just asking someone and that little bit of flattery, you will get a response.
It's kind of a dead art what you're suggesting, though, or at least from what I can see in recruitment, that a lot of people feel that networking almost has a bad word, right? Because a lot of people have abused the networking and wasted everyone's time and just wanted to connect for no reason and whatever. But I mean, for me, coming from the music business before, it's like you need to be an expert networker, right? Like you need to be dropped into venues with strangers in countries you've never been to where everybody's drunk and get names, phone numbers, make them think you're cool, like do
that
business.
Sounds fun. That sounds like so much fun, Rick. I would love to do that. I'd be great at that.
It must be in England or something like that, I think, probably.
But I mean, like, you know, networking doesn't have to be, because I feel like there's a lot of empty networking that occurs on LinkedIn or whatever else where people don't really take advantage or they're not really interesting enough for it to go anywhere, right? But I think now's a good time to revive that mentality as a standout, right? Is to learn how to just be. Well, this I guess brings to the last question. I just want to read this comment before we go to the last question too, which came in. First of all, someone who said they find the email followed by call works very well, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Same person said, LOL, great gig. That is, it was great. It was my own company. I mean, we didn't make $1 zillion. I'm here, right? Otherwise, you'd be reading about me in Forbes if I did it. If I was better at it. But this might have been covered already. This person's talking about, Julie, you were talking about the lack of follow-up, right? And so they say often just becoming better organized can solve that issue. Once you finish the call, put a follow-up in your calendar, etc. Like after all that work, you know, it's true that a lot of people, you know, don't have a process in place to automatically put in a next task and a next follow-up, and it gets lost in the shuffle. I think that organizational piece is key in sales.
I think I was going to say there's one thing that after every phone call, any sort of kind of communication, I always follow up with an email without fail. And I put a note in my calendar in terms of when I'm following up as well. And then there's other things where I'm like, oh, I know that they might be looking for this and this. Here's a few folks in my network that might be of interest. Again, demonstrating that I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, following up is absolutely essential, and repeatedly following up is essential.
Agreed.
Well, yeah, and that brings to the next, or segues nicely into the next question. Julie, you mentioned about like the 10 touch points. And I think nowadays there's a lot of different potential touch points someone can have, which to me, I have gotten, obviously we're on a podcast that I do about staffing, right? So I think it's very clear what my approach is sort of the personal branding approach, which I think is gaining popularity because, you know, a touch point can be inviting people to just be a guest on this podcast. It can be commenting on their own, like, you know, their own content, right? As opposed to it being like another in a sequence talking about work. It can also be a different kind of touch point. How do you guys, are you seeing an upsurge in a positive, negative way of the personal branding? Is it creating just a lot more noise for the most part? Is it annoying? Like, what are your thoughts on the personal branding approach in sales and recruitment?
I personally feel like I think everyone has to do what feels organic to them and what feels natural. So somebody that might not feel authentic to them. And if you're trying to do a personal brand and it feels forced and not natural to you, then it's probably not going to be successful. If you're somebody who enjoys being on social media, likes putting out content, can do it consistently, just like when you're making your sales calls and your emails, it has to be something that's consistent. If you're posting, you know, every once in a while, you're probably not going to do a great job with that personal branding. So, but I personally do feel that it's effective, especially I try to, you know, call, email, LinkedIn connection. You know, if they're in my org chart, I've kind of mapped out who I'm targeting. I want to make sure I'm connecting with them on LinkedIn. They're going to post about hiring. They're going to be posting about things that are relevant. And as to what you were saying, and Rick, is, you know, doing a little touch point, commenting, showing interest, you read the post and you have an actual comment or a feedback on it. So I do think that that does classify as a touch point, as building that relationship. And it also shows if you're posting about staffing or challenges and you have, you know, a legitimate point, that also shows that you're an expert, that you, as to what Lizzie's saying, show that you're an expert. And I do think it takes time. I'm sure, as you know, Rick, doing this podcast, it probably wasn't like overnight. You had to think about it. You had to continually post and gain interest. And the more that you do it, the more people are going to be interested and the more people are going to be listening. And
what do you mean? It was flawless out of the gate. I promise.
Yeah.
Our first ever episode, and look how good it is.
So, Laurie, I'm conscious of time here, but I don't disagree. But I think what we each have to do is find that unique thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be useless at putting together a podcast. Rick's done, which is brilliant. That's his thing. I think you have to find something which is comfortable for you, because else I think that you'll likely get lost in the shuffle.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of people now. I think LinkedIn has definitely taken off in popularity in the last few years in terms of content and people posting.
Oh, it's a war. It's a war now. So I think that you have to find your pocket, else I think that, and it doesn't got to be LinkedIn related. It can be anything related, whatever
Right.
it is. You've got to find your je ne sais quoi, else you're like, thank you, goodbye.
I mean, yes and no. I think keep it simple. Like, what we do is not complicated.
Yeah.
It's not easy by any stretch, and I never like to say that, but it's not complicated. But it requires a multi-channel approach. We discussed this already. It requires following the process. Laurie, you've alluded to it earlier in your career, or those earlier in their career. It's like, have a script. I mean, I still have my pitch docs open in front of me when I'm pitching. I don't use it. It's just there. And I think it's important to have that and to update it and make sure that you kind of know where you're at. So I'm like, multi-channel approach, follow the process. And then, personal branding, I think that's great. Like, it's good to have that. But I think if you're sticking to the basics, like that's kind of what's important. Like, don't reinvent the wheel, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, cool. How's that adding value to your desk and what you're trying to achieve here? And if you can kind of measure the outcome and it is adding value, fantastic. If not, cool. You probably want to try and consider something different and just stick into the fundamentals of recruitment, because that's what's going to get you results at the end of the day. And there's other things that might complement it. And then the other thing is, Laura, you mentioned consistency. Whatever you're doing, do it consistently, do it well.
Agreed.
You know what, Lizzie, to elaborate on that too, you are totally right that I think there are a lot of people who think that doing a podcast are going to be the next Joe Rogan or like insert big podcast here. Like, the point of it is to be a successful podcast host, and it really isn't, right? Like, for me personally, I'm fully aware that the benefit of doing this is that people are more likely to respond to me when I reach out to them.
Right.
An hour a week, and what does it do? It means that my response rate goes through the roof, because as soon as people look at who I am, they're like, this guy's an SME, he's an expert as a rec direct. Look at him, he has his own podcast. I could be talking about God knows what. They haven't listened to the podcast yet, but they just believe. Hopefully it's good content. I think it's pretty good, but you know what I'm saying? They just believe based on that alone, and so instantly they'll get back to me right away. So
you're invested. You enjoy doing it. It's something that you're passionate about. So again, that comes across. So if there is something that can complement the fundamentals of recruitment, fantastic. But also, if there isn't, don't try and find something that's not you. Just stick to the basics and do them really well, and you'll be successful.
Right.
Yep.
I do agree. Like, obviously, Rick, there's some passion there. There's some, you find enjoyment in it. And it comes across in what you do. And I do think in the recruitment process, if you show that you're actually enjoying the process as well, if you're picking up the call and just, you have to be prepared. Like Lizzie says, have that script there and ready, because sometimes with cold calls, you never know when somebody's going to answer, and you might have made 20, 30 calls and nobody's answered. And if you're not prepared, so I do think you have to enjoy it as well. You have to be consistent. You have to be authentic to who you are. And I do think personal branding works if it's something that you feel good and passionate and you can be consistent on it. But just like everything else, you need to also be consistent and enjoy what you do. And I do think that people do hear it in your voice and in your emails. If you're enjoying what you're doing, if you feel that you can provide value, if you feel that you're helping, it does come across.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
That authenticity. Well, I think there we have it. Unless anybody else has a burning need to throw something else in, I feel like this was a very lovely episode. And yeah, lots of great tips. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for
Yeah.
sharing your knowledge. And hope to see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.